Hey, Ruben, thanks for getting in touch with me. We're going to talk about remote work. You had some questions. Maybe you want to introduce yourself quickly. I'm the CEO of GitLab for our viewers. What do you do?
Yeah, thank you, Sid, for taking the time to chat with me. Um, I am a entrepreneur. I'm founding a new company. And before this one, I was a founder. I went through YC. I was a software engineer. But I started as a freelancer, like a remote freelancer from Cuba. And
Wow, sorry, from Cuba?
yeah, I'm from Cuba.
You made that work from
Uh,
Cuba, from like they have not so fast internet there.
yeah, so I did that for 2 years with a
Wow.
dial-up modem. Uh,
Wow.
and
Respect.
yeah, it was very interesting because I couldn't say to my clients that I was from Cuba because they would say like the internet is bad. I'm not going to work with you. So I
They'd
have
also say that that might be illegal in the US sanctions.
no because I was working for companies not only in the US, outside
Okay.
US,
Okay.
using like freelancer.com, like a website. Um, but it was very interesting. But that is how I started with the whole like remote work. Um, and then here I came to US. I joined Google. I was like my team was fully distributed. I was in the calendar team, and I was in the Android. I was here in Mountain View. iOS was in London, and designers, PMs were like in Switzerland, like Zurich. So it was like the whole like distributed team.
Very cool.
Um, so that, and then right now I'm trying to help like remote companies. I want to build something new, and I am very passionate about remote work. So I want to help and improve that, like promote more like distributed companies in some way. And that's why I have been reading a bunch of books, like handbooks about like GitLab and Zapier and Buffer. Of these companies are very transparent. And then I just like send you the email, and you were like kind to like say, yeah, let's spend some time.
Cool. How can I help?
Yeah, so I have like a few questions here. Like, first of all, I want to start like congrats with your last funding, round of funding. It's great to see that. But something that came to your mind, you mentioned in a few interviews that uh, your challenge, like getting like raising money as a remote company, right?
Yeah.
How was this time? Like, how what was the difference?
Well, first of all, thanks for the congratulations. And I think as your company gets bigger, investors can focus more on the financials instead of the team and the product. If you raise your first money, it's based on the team, like who are the people and what is their idea. And then at a certain point, it's based on product market fit. And then as you get bigger, it's more and more based on what are the numbers, how fast are they growing, what is the revenue, what is their margin, and how is that projected to go out to increase in the future. So it becomes less relevant. Now there's still a worry that it might not scale. So like, well, maybe it works at 100 people, but not at 200, and they'll just keep upping those numbers as you grow the company. But then we could alleviate a lot of those concerns by pointing at like, hey, people here, they clearly know what they do, they clearly know their title, they are able to onboard fast and get effective fast, and we can point them to like how we do it and to data points, and that addresses a lot of their concerns. So it was less, it gets easier as you become bigger to fundraise as a remote company.
I see, because you have the numbers that help you with that.
Yeah, and at IPO, like people stop caring. As you become a public company, people care even less about the product and everything else, and they care even more about the numbers.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. So I just have a few questions on like the day-to-day operations, like toolings and like how do you manage like communication, for example. I saw in the handbook that you have the issues, like using GitLab issues first, and then emails, and then like chat, right? That is the priority that you guys give. How do you handle that in general? Like, how is that working? How do you know where do you need to use? What do you need to use at each time?
Yeah, that's hard, finding the right format. I think we use Slack more often than we intend to. Like, then is, for example, in the handbook. Um, I think where it's good is like if there's free flowing thought, like, okay, have it in Slack, but as soon as something gets concrete, like, make it into an issue and allow people in other time zones, etc., to contribute, make sure there's a record of what happened. So yeah, you have to kind of switch between the media, and there's some parts of our company where people are using Slack for things that should be in issues, which is not great, and it's not allowing for asynchronous communication, and Slack becomes one long meeting, which is not good. But all in all, yeah, we use those different media. I think we're using email a lot less than before.
Okay. So, and how is Slack working when you have like a bunch of different time zones difference? Like you have some people in the team, different time zones, like how the real-time chat works?
Yeah, it's horrible. It's the end of distance, but not of time zones. Time zones are still very much a thing, and it makes it hard. It's the hardest on the team members in Asia Pacific, because we have most people, most team members, and most users and customers in America and Europe. We tend to gravitate towards that. The prime time of overlap between the West Coast and Central Europe, that hour is blocked for like our functional group update, our team call. But it's been a struggle to include the people from Asia Pacific. They have their own company call that's at a better time, but it's missing some of the announcement, and that like the people announcing stuff are not on their call, and it's a much smaller audience. So if you have, please tell me how to solve it. But yeah, people have to stay in sync with the schedules of their children and the son and everything else. So we can't have a company schedule. So it's a very hard problem.
Yeah, time zone is like something hard to see. What I've been seeing other remote companies have been using is trying to go, the same thing that you're trying to do is going more like asynchronous communication, with like you guys. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, issues, asynchronous, and recording more. Like we're broadcasting this. We got a couple of viewers here now on YouTube. Thanks for watching, people, and that's really important. So we do record a lot of meetings and then post the broadcast, either public, or if it can be public, posted in the appropriate channels internally.
And for that, you use YouTube, like it's a private channel or something.
YouTube, or we have a Zoom call that's recorded.
Okay. Just random thoughts. How do you guys deal with like bad internet, like from Cuba, or for like any like bad Wi-Fi? Do you have any?
Yeah. So most of the time, there's a person might have bad internet, but there will be other people online. So it's not like at an office where if the internet's down, like the whole company's down. So that's better. We do tell people like get good internet. The company pays for it, so you can like expense your internet costs. I used to have even 2 uplinks. I've stopped that. We got great web pass here in San Francisco, and if not, I'll tether with my phone and be able to go online like that. The point where we're weak is when we have our summit every 9 months, 350 people in Cape Town, and then it has to be good. So we need big uplinks there. We're starting months in advance all the time with like requesting extra uplinks, and we're bringing our own equipment. And we went from first no equipment to then access points. So I think next time we'll bring the entire network infrastructure ourselves.
Yeah, that is a good idea. Also, you need to figure out what is a good place to like bring the whole team, and also with the good internet, and like you can have your network.
Yep.
What about like hiring? I've been like, coming from Cuba, the first thing that's coming to my mind is any legal constraint for like GitLab to hire. Like if you have a new candidate that is like super talented, but is from a new country that you didn't hire before, how do you guys assess that?
Yeah, so we have people in over 40 countries. Not in all the countries we have an entity. We have an entity for a small portion of those countries, but for the vast majority of our team members, because they're not evenly distributed. If they're from a country that we currently don't have people in and no entity in, then they start as a contractor. So in lots of countries, we hire them as contractors. We a new country is not a problem. We do have an exclude list. For example, we cannot hire people in North Korea because there's US sanctions against them. And there's a couple of other countries where the risk for us is too high and we're not hiring there at the moment. And those can be found on our jobs page.
Yeah. And sorry, I'm going too much in the details, but I'm trying to get...
No, that's fine.
As a contractor, the way that you compensate them is like salary and equity? Also, it's easy to do that as a contractor? Or?
Yeah. So there's, well, it's not easy, but we do it anyway. So it's salary, sometimes a bonus, depending on your function. For example, sales, that's common. And equity for every single person that joins the company. Equity rules differ per country. So we have significant costs to make that happen. But we thought it was really important to, it is really important to us that everyone can kind of participate in profiting from if we become successful as a company. And I think we could have easily said like no stock options for people outside the US. They're less familiar with it, but that would be a really sad sight if you have a successful outcome. Suppose we become a public company and then all the European people they're empty-handed while the US people made a big gain in worth. So we're doing it. It's painful, but luckily we had a great finance team who says, yeah, we're going to make it happen, even though it's hard.
Yeah, and I'm thinking around like new startups that are trying to be distributed or like remote. So from that angle, how you guys did that when you were like small? When were you and your co-founder, maybe like 2 more engineers, and you don't have this big like team of legal people like finance?
Yeah, so up to 20 people, I did everything that wasn't building the product or selling the product. I should have stopped that earlier because then it became unmanageable, but I continued a bit too long. Our first employee was a person who lived in Serbia, Marin. And his dream was to one day come to the Netherlands. And only years later, we could make that happen. He's now living in Amsterdam. We have, by the way, we have something called the right to immigrate. If you work for a year at GitLab, you can immigrate to the Netherlands, and we can make that happen wherever you live. So we made it happen with. I remember the first time I had to send money to Dimitri. The only way to get there was to Western Union money transfer. So I went to the office and they said, oh, want to wire from the Netherlands to the Ukraine? Is this someone you know or someone you met over the internet? Because they were so afraid that it would be a scam. That's how he got his first paycheck. Paid up front because he didn't trust me that I'd actually send him the money.
Yeah, I know what is that. Western Union is very common, like all countries. But about like hiring, like how do you know? What is the process that you guys do to know that that person is going to be good working like remote, working from home? Because that is like a big challenge, right?
Yeah, we're not specifically testing for it. We do ask people whether they're comfortable working remotely, and they can work from home or an office. If they prefer an office, we'll pay for it. So, but it's working from the location you prefer, not necessarily home.
Yep.
But whether they're comfortable with that. Most people say, look, I'm cool with it. I can just easily do it. I just want to make sure that I'm not second-class citizen, that I'm not in some satellite, that people still think of me. And then we're like, yeah, well, guess what? We don't have an office. The CEO is working from a location without anybody else there. And then it's not a problem. And we just hire for people that are effective, that can motivate themselves, that can organize themselves. I think you should do that in any company, whether you have an office or not, and then people can be successful everywhere. I think it doesn't require a special type of person. We have all kinds of people, introverts, extroverts, a wide diversity of people, and I think it's fine.
So yeah, for what I'm hearing is like you don't interview for that particular thing, but you interview for like manager of one person, how people like to say.
Yep.
How like any tips on like how to do that?
How to interview?
Yeah, how to test like that person is good for be a manager for himself? How do you test that skill?
Yeah, for him or herself.
Yeah.
I think what I look, were they successful in past jobs? So you talk about what they did before. You talk about like, tell me a situation where you successfully completed something without a lot of guidance, and then go into that. What was the result? What was the outcome? How did they do it?
I see. Okay, so it's just like about your past experience. How do you manage something alone?
And for example, for developers, we give them an assignment from our real issue tracker. Like, hey, this is stuff we actually want to build. Please go build it, and then we can see whether they're effective at that.
And you gave like 1 week or like a few days?
Yeah, a few days, I think.
Okay, it's like a project.
Yeah, we don't want to make it too big. It's for us, it's not about free work or something. It actually costs us like a lot of time to review it and give them good feedback. It's about seeing how they communicate, how they think about the problem.
What about site developers, like in sales or marketing? Do you also give like a small feature project, or?
We do that less. I think we should do it a bit more. In marketing, you could say, hey, if you're in product marketing, pitch this part of the product to me. In sales, you can do a mock. In sales, it's common to do a mock sales session, either with GitLab or if they're not so familiar with it, with the product they're currently selling. So I think that's being done as part of the interviews.
Changing gears, I'm thinking of like new companies that are building, new founders building like companies in a remote way, like remote only. From your experience, or when you were like starting building like GitLab, what was, if anything, that at the beginning you thought like this is going to be a big challenge and it wasn't, or the other way, this is going to be easy, you did like a remote company and it was a challenge?
Yeah, so you wanted specific to remote things. What is easy, what is hard? I thought it would be very hard to kind of organize the social interaction in a remote company that doesn't happen naturally. We do things like a team call, and I thought it wouldn't scale, but now we're doing it with over 100 people sometimes, talking about engagements and babies and people passing away and happy and sad moments. So that's going really well. We're doing breakout groups now where we split people up in smaller conversations, which is going well. We call them virtual coffee breaks, where people just chat for half an hour. That seems to be going well. So all this social interaction could be organized. It's not particularly easy, but the fact that we're able to do it successfully and create those connections between people, I think it's remarkable. What seemed easy, but what was hard? I'll just answer it with stuff that's genuinely hard. Paying people. We just switched to a new payment provider, ADP. Those stock options, like that's not easy stuff. That's costing us a lot of money to figure that out for every country. That's just the legal frameworks aren't ready for stuff like this, and it's painful. So far, we've navigated a lot successfully, but it's taking a lot of time to stay compliant.
Yeah, that was something that the CEO from Zapier mentioned. That was like the legal stuff around a remote company in general.
Yeah, I think there's a great opportunity for someone that starts a company that's like Stripe for hiring people. Like, you found someone to live in another country, you just want to pay someone and make sure the money lands in their bank account and everything is taken care of. That's what the other person also wants. Take care of those problems. I think Atjen did that very successfully, where they supported every single last local payment system. And I think that's needed for employment too, employment as a service. And there's companies doing it in the US, but I think like TriNet, but I think it's really important to have a company that does it all over the world.
Yeah, each country is different, each city is different taxes for different states, even inside US.
Take care of that, and then just in the beginning, bill me a lot. And then as you see that few people quit and there's few lawsuits, just give me a better rate over time. So do really good risk management instead of trying to be perfect. Just do risk management, and people pay more as the company or the person are a bigger risk.
Yeah, that is interesting. That is for sure a big challenge for any like remote company. What advice would you give to like a founder that is starting like a remote company?
I would say have a look at our handbook and try to copy as much as possible from it. It's Creative Commons, like our entire marketing website.
Yeah, that is a good advice. I was reading all of that, and it's like super useful, super helpful, or the handbook. I would guess like the same thing will be for like word of cautions, like something that would say like, be careful about this when you're building a remote company.
Yeah, I don't think there's just so much to say that I much rather have to go to the handbook and read the 1,500 pages that are there, and then I think that's the best advice. And I think the world is catching up to this. I see like new startups at Y Combinator. It's getting more popular to be all remote.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of skepticism from investors, but it's unwarranted. It's the future. And this is going to happen. There's going to be really big companies being built like this.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And what I've been seeing right now is like the success of like startups like GitLab, like Buffer, like
Zapier. Envision is probably the biggest startup without an office right now.
Right? Like 700.
700 people. And WordPress is also like hundreds of people, and they closed their HQ.
Yeah, they opened their office in San Francisco. I think that you guys have similar situation, right? That you create an office and then you have to like close it because nobody was going there.
Exactly.
What were you when you were like building GitLab at the beginning? Right now, for sure, you build like a bunch of internal tools that you need as a remote company. When you're starting, what will be like a tool or a product software, a piece of software that you wish you had at that moment when you like starting a company?
The current version of GitLab. We build a lot of things, especially in issues in our planning software, where you can like do roadmaps and things like that with ourselves in mind as well. So I think that really helps. I think Zoom is essential. It's so great of a video conferencing system. So those are two things that help a lot.
Yeah, for sure. You guys build a bunch of features inside GitLab that now is super helpful for all people, like the boards, like load management, issue management. So you guys are sharing a lot with the handbook about the company, and I think it's super like useful that you guys are very transparent. Even like this channel, getting my core, making like public is going to like share any answer that you give to everybody. What if you have any idea? What else do you think that when I'm talking about I'm talking about like passion or like remote work, like the community of other founders. What can we do to also like help other remote companies in general?
Yeah, I think it would be great if there's like an advocacy group. I toyed with that idea. I started remoteonly.org. We now talk about like all remote in GitLab because I think it sounds better as a word. But having allremote.org or something like that contains all the materials from all the different companies, that organizes meetups around this, that has a forum, I think that would be great. And we're willing to sponsor that, but right now we don't have someone at GitLab that can spend half of their time on this.
Yeah, having a community that try to support each other, advocate that. Yeah, I think that can be like very interesting. I just have my last question, more like the future, like in general, like where do you see this space going? You already mentioned that you think it's the future, but like in 10, 20, 30 years, where do you want to see, or do you think that's going to these remote works?
Yeah, so I think, look, this is going to take over. Like I'm now in downtown San Francisco. There's in Soma, there's like 80,000 people coming here to the East Cut every day. I don't think that's the future. I do think people will come together, but it will be much more for a specific purpose. So I think it's going to become the default to run companies all remote. There's people all over the planet. There's people want the freedom to be with their loved ones or want to be flexible in where they are. And I think that's a great perk to give people without a lot of downsides. I think it institutes better processes in companies when you don't have that backup of tapping someone on the shoulder. You're going to work more organized, and that's more effective. In 30 years, we'll have self-driving cars by that time. So I think it's really interesting to think about, hey, you could probably work and sleep in a self-driving vehicle. So it would, and you're still probably going to spend a lot of time transporting. And like in history, the time spent in transit has been pretty constant. So as we go faster, we just go to more places. So I could see a future where you're working or sleeping in a transporting vehicle, and then when you wake up or when your work is done, you're at a beautiful location with a couple of other people that you wanted to meet at that point. So where you're basically all the time in between meetings, but you're able to use that time in between meetings effectively.
More efficiently, yeah.
And spending a lot more time with friends, spending a lot more time in beautiful locations, and having people open up restaurants and those meeting areas that are catering towards that.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that is bringing me to this space is that phrase, that quote that said, talent is equally distributed in the world, but opportunities are not.
Yeah,
I think that these kind of like remote companies are trying to make the opportunities also more like distributed around the world. Similar to what you say.
For sure. A lot of our people are have an opportunity to work at like a fast-growing internet startup, and they're getting more interesting job. They're getting better colleagues. They're getting a better compensation than they would get in their local market, and I think that's very, very exciting.
Yep. That's why I'm excited about like remote work in general. Coming from Cuba, is like, I want to bring opportunities to other places like Cuba.
And Venezuela could use a bit, and Jordan, and like there's so many places where there's great people, but the opportunities aren't there.
Yep. And just like my last question was like, it's the same question, like what is your long-term goal like with GitLab? Where do you want to see GitLab in like 10, 20, 30 years from the business side and for like the company, like culture, remote work side, from both sides?
Yeah. So in 10 years, we still want to be an all remote company. Hopefully by that time, we've been a public company for 8 years, where we've become the default tool to do DevOps, and on top of Kubernetes, we have more than 1,000 people. We're worth more than $10 billion. We're worth more than $1 billion a year in revenue. That's the dream. That's what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I think you guys are going that path successfully so far.
So far, so good, but still a long way to go.
Yeah, it's a lot of like challenge in the way.
And another thing we're toying with is what I spend time thinking about is that if all remote is the future, then there's going to be more opportunities, but it is for specific skill sets. Like there's only 20 million developers in the world, and there should be a lot more. There's an acute need for more people that have security training. So apart from the job being accessible, also education has to get more accessible. And I think right now education online is making it more accessible, but you still need kind of the time to like actually educate yourself. And during that time, you need income. So how can we offer education in a way that people can sustain themselves? And I think an interesting approach there, what I'm thinking about is, why not have people take out a student loan, and as they achieve their milestones, you give them give the money back basically from that loan. You give them 80%, only 10 or 20% goes to the education. The rest just comes back in your pocket as you achieve milestones, so you can sustain yourself and maybe your dependents, and that would open up education to a lot more people.
Yeah, it's a good question that you are asking. Like, how can we improve education like outside the big companies, the big like cities, and make it more like democratized to everybody, right? Also, like just like random thought. One idea I had before was like more internship. When you are learning, sometimes the best way to learn is with a real world problem, right? Solving a real problem. And for companies, sometimes you need somebody to fix and solve this. Like there's a bunch of companies right now, like they are trying to go and be more like techie, like in some way, like more tech savvy, but they don't have the talent there to support them. So like trying to connect them can be a good, I don't know, just like brainstorming. Now you mentioned that.
Yeah, with internships, it's really hard. For example, with us, we don't have internships. We're even stopped hiring junior developers. So we're only hiring junior developers if they already contributed to GitLab as a product. But other than that, we don't have vacancies for that because it's very costly to kind of educate them.
Mentorship, yeah.
We much rather spend that time to get someone from intermediate to senior. So any education company will have to deal with this. And if you want to run it on a very tight margin, which will be necessary to give a lot of money back, you'll have students from the second year training the students from the first year. You'll have the people that are already in a job still helping the people out that are kind of in their last year. Also with job access opportunities, like getting them into a new job. And I think the real world experience you'll do in things like Upwork, like the Elon's marketplaces, and contributing to open source projects.
Yeah. Hey, I have like my question. Like I just asked you my question. I have a remote work.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for the talk. Enjoyed it.
Thank you for sharing your time and your experience.
Cool.
Bye.
See ya.